Before we begin, a quick favor. If you've been enjoying the podcast, would you consider leaving a review? It really helps others find this space and join us on their own healing journey. And if you haven't already, you can get your free IFS meditations at exploreifs.com. Welcome back to IFS Meditations and Insights. I'm Tim Fortescue, your guide on this journey toward wholeness through the lens of internal family systems. Together, we're creating a sacred space to explore, accept, and love all parts of ourselves. As we do this work, we open ourselves to experiencing divine love and living more authentically. Let's begin. In this session, I want to talk about something that shows up almost in every relationship at some point or another: conflict. And more specifically, what happens inside us when conflict begins. Because here's what I've noticed, both in my own life and in the work I do with people. Conflict rarely starts as a clear, calm conversation about a disagreement. It usually starts with a shift, a change in temperature. Something tightens in the body, the voice shifts, and suddenly we're not quite ourselves anymore. If you spent any time with internal family systems, you probably already recognize that experience. You're talking with your partner or a friend or a family member. Maybe you're tired. Maybe the conversation is about something that's been building for a while. And then something shifts. A part of you takes over. Your tone changes. Your chest tightens. You start defending or explaining, or maybe going quiet in a way that isn't really peace. It's more like a wall. And later, maybe that night, maybe the next morning, you think to yourself, that wasn't really how I wanted to show up. And that's what we're exploring today. What's actually happening in those moments? And what becomes possible when we bring just a little self-energy and awareness to them using an IFS approach. In IFS, we understand that protectors are parts of us whose entire job is to keep us safe. They developed that job for good reasons, usually early in life, when something felt threatening or overwhelming, and we needed a way to manage it. Over time, those protective strategies became automatic, efficient, fast. So fast that by the time conflict shows up in an adult relationship, the protector doesn't wait to be asked. It steps in immediately. I want to share something personal here from my own journey, something that happened just last week. We were on a family trip over spring break, and my wife Tessa and I were in the middle of one of those conversations. The kids were quiet, not screaming and yelling for an hour or so on a video. And you know, the kind of conversation that starts out as something small, logistics of the trip, I think, or something like that. Something about the week ahead, and then it tilted the way those conversations sometimes do. I don't even remember exactly what she said that triggered me, but I remember the shift in me. Something tightened my jaw, my chest, and I heard myself start to explain, not respond, explain, and to explain so that I was right. And sometimes I can just, in those moments of being triggered, I just argue with anything. that comes up. She can't be right. And I think if I could just lay out the situation clearly enough, in enough detail, she'd understand me and the discomfort of not being fully seen and understood, and the need to be right and being in that discomfort of her not seeing it that way, that would all just go away. And so I kept talking. She got quieter. The quieter she got, the more I explained. And later, after the conversation had kind of dissolved without really resolving, I sat with it and I could see it pretty clearly. There'd been a part of me that was afraid of being misunderstood or not seen, and just really validated. Or maybe afraid of being seen as the problem. And that part's solution was to talk its way out of the threat. That's a protector doing exactly what it knows how to do. It wasn't wrong to want to be understood. It's a real human need. But the part was so activated, so in charge that it couldn't actually listen. It was too busy defending. Here's the thing I keep coming back to. My wife wasn't attacking me, but a part of me experienced the conversation as if she was. Because that part has been in situations before where being misunderstood had some real consequences. It was protecting me from something that wasn't actually happening. That's what protectors do. They respond to the present based on the past. And they respond fast. Why? Because something vulnerable is getting close. Maybe a part of you fears being misunderstood and has been misunderstood before, maybe many times. Maybe a part fears rejection, fears being left, fears being dismissed. Maybe a part carries the memory of times when your voice genuinely wasn't heard, when speaking up didn't help. These parts have history. They've been doing their job for a long time. So when conflict begins, even a small conflict, even a conversation with people who genuinely love you and care, hasn't turned hostile yet. But that protector steps forward and says, I've got this. And suddenly, that protector is the one speaking, not you from self, not the curious, open, grounded core of you that actually knows how to connect. The protector. Let me name a few of the patterns I see most often. There's the manager that tries to control the conversation, staying logical, explaining, staying on top. It's not trying to be cold. It just doesn't feel safe enough to be warm. There's the withdrawer, the part that goes quiet and disappears. Not because it doesn't care, because it learned that speaking up leads to more hurt. There's the defender, the part that pushes back fast, that matches intensity with intensity, that says, well, actually, before the other person is even finished. Yeah, that defender was showing up in my conversation. And there's the explainer, the part that needs to be understood. Yeah, this one resonates too. Needs the other person to get it. And we'll keep talking, keep clarifying until they do. Even if they never do. These are protectors. They're not wrong. They're not bad. They're doing what they were built to do. But they often make connection harder, not easier. Because when a protector is speaking from its strategy, the other person usually doesn't feel connected to you. They feel like they're talking to a wall or a debate opponent or an empty room. And often they have their own protectors rising up in response. So you get protector talking to protector, and actually connection gets harder and harder to find. One of the most transformative relational practices in parts work and IFS is deceptively simple. It's the practice of speaking for our parts rather than from them. Here's what that looks like. Speaking from a protector might sound like, "You never listen to me," or "You always." You hear that never and always. Very likely a protector. And speaking for a part might sound like, "A part of me feels like it isn't being heard right now." Read those again. Feel the difference. The first one is a weapon. It points, it accuses, it corners the other person, and makes them responsible for your experience. "You never listen to me. You're never going to understand me. We're never going to see eye to eye." The second one is an invitation. It names something real and vulnerable, and it opens a door. "A part of me feels like it isn't being heard right now." And here's why that shift matters so much. When you speak for a part, you're still you. You're still present. You haven't been taken over. You're holding the part with some self energy, even if it's just a drop. And a drop of self is enough. When you say, "A part of me feels unheard," the other person has room to breathe. They can respond with curiosity instead of defense. They can ask, "What would help you feel heard right now?" They might not always, but the door is open. Blame closes doors. Vulnerability opens them. And speaking for your parts is, at its heart, an act of vulnerability. It's saying, "Here's what's happening inside me. I trust you enough to let you see it." That's not weakness, that's intimacy. Now, I know that in the middle of a real conflict, all of this can feel impossible. I just experienced it last week, and I may experience it again tomorrow. We still have, when I'm recording this, a few more days of spring break, and my whole family's home. My wife and I work from home. It gets complicated. And it's complicated and can feel impossible because the protector moves fast. And when we're in it, we often don't even realize it's happened until we're already in the middle of a response we'll later regret. So here's a simple practice. I call it the 5-second internal check in. It's not complicated, and it's just a pause. Before you respond, even just a breath before, you ask yourself, "What part of me is activated right now?" And that's it. That's the whole practice. Sometimes the answer comes immediately. "Oh, there's the part that's afraid of being dismissed." Or "There's the part that always needs to be right." Or "There's the part that shuts down when someone raises their voice." And just noticing them, naming them, even silently, can soften their intensity. Not because the feeling goes away, it usually doesn't, but because you're no longer inside the feeling, you're with it. There's a difference. When you're inside a protector, or a protector is inside of you, but however you want to see it, you're blended. You are the fear or the anger or the defensiveness. When you're with the protector, you're you. And the part is nearby doing its thing, and you can acknowledge it. And you can say inside yourself, I see you. I know what you're trying to do. I've got this. You're not alone. That's not dismissing the part. It's actually what the part has been waiting for. A lot of protectors are exhausted. They've been working hard for a long time. And when we can show up from self and say, I'm here, sometimes they can finally take a breath for the first time in a long time. Here's what I love about this practice in the context of relationships. When we begin taking responsibility for our parts, when we begin saying, a part of me instead of you made me, something shifts in the relational field. It doesn't happen all at once, but over time, something builds. Couples start to understand each other's parts. Partners learn to recognize when the other's protector's shown up. Not to call it out, but to get curious about it and to ask gently, what's happening inside you right now? Families begin to see conflict differently, not as a threat to the relationship, but as a window into each other's inner worlds. And that's a profound reframe. Because if conflict is a window, then it's actually an opportunity to see something in your partner you haven't seen before, an opportunity to be seen in return. I've watched couples transform their communication not through some dramatic intervention, but through one small shift. And I'm learning that in my own relationship and relationships with my kids. Learning to say a part of me feels this way. That language does something. It creates just enough distance from the intensity to allow curiosity in. And curiosity, one of the 8 qualities of self in IFS, is one of the most powerful ingredients in any healthy relationship. When we're curious about our own parts and about each other's parts, we stop being enemies in a conflict. We become companions exploring something together. So here's where I want to leave you in this episode. The next time you notice tension rising in a conversation, whether it's a small friction or something bigger, try a small experiment. Just pause and check inside. Notice the parts that want to jump in, want to defend, want to explain, want to disappear. And see if you can speak for them instead of from them. You don't have to do this perfectly. You probably won't at first. I still don't, more often than I'd like to admit. Like I said, I've got my own explainer who will talk your ear off if you let him. But even partial presence, even one moment of noticing a part before it completely takes over is meaningful. Because that moment of noticing is self showing up. And when self shows up, even for a breath, it changes things. The conversation becomes a little gentler, a little more honest, a little more connected. And that's often where real healing begins. Not in some dramatic breakthrough, but in a small moment, mid-conflict, where you pause and choose something different. Thanks for joining me in this session. Really glad you're doing this work. No, you're not alone. You're beloved, parts and all. That wraps up another episode of IFS Meditations and Insights. If today's episode was meaningful to you, please follow, subscribe, and share with someone who might need it. A positive review helps more people find this healing work. And don't forget, you can get your free IFS meditations at exploreifs.com. And until our next session, be gentle with yourself. I'll try to do the same, because we're beloved human beings.